I read 14 books in February, and I'm incredibly proud of myself because that is unheard of for me. I am in the best reading mood of my life. For the first time ever, I actually looked on Storygraph the other day, and I am 10 books ahead of schedule, which is actually insane for me. Like, I spent the whole of last year trying to keep up with my Storygraph scheduled thing. I was always a book behind. So I'm just going to make the most of this mood and see what we can read this year. So yeah, I'm going to give you my stats and also review the books I read this month. I have all my stats here. So like I said, I read 14 books, which was 3,608 pages. The moods were emotional, dark and reflective, which kind of makes sense, and mostly less than 300 pages. I did read one 500 plus page book this month, which I ended up loving. So maybe I need to give more long books a go, but they are so intimidating. And all the books I read were fiction, which is normal, but is not something I want to be normal. I am reading a non-fiction at the moment. I'm just a lot slower with them. I like to fully make sure I'm taking everything in, so I just read them a lot slower than I do fiction books. It's not the sort of thing I'll read 100 pages of in a day. So they're a bit slower, but I'd rather do that and really take it all in. So hopefully my non-fiction number will go up next month. The genres I read from were again very typical for me: literary, contemporary, horror. I read one classic and one set of short stories. I read 7 physical books, 5 ebooks and 2 audiobooks this month. I got 4 of my books from the library, which I worked out meant I saved £51.96 in book money. Which is maybe a bit girl mathy because I'm like, that's money I can now spend on other things rather than actually saving them. I read 3 books from my physical TBR and I read 1 book on NetGalley. That was a eARC. I also like tracking my Read the World stats. So I read 7 translated books, 5 of which were women in translated, and they were from 7 different countries actually. So we had Brazil, Argentina, Italy, Denmark, Russia, Japan, and then 1 new country for me this month, which was Suriname. So my plan to go through the books is I have ranked them from my favourite to my least favourite. So I'm going to go from bottom to top of the list. So starting at number 14, I'm so sorry to say this because I know this is a controversial opinion. I read my first Clarice Lispector this month, which was An Apprenticeship or the Book of Pleasures. And I was so excited to finally pick up a Clarice Lispector. And it wasn't for me, this one. I didn't hate the writing style, but I found, this is going to sound quite harsh, but I found it quite cringy. The female main character, Laurie, I didn't mind at all. I enjoyed her journey and I found a lot of passages about her, they did kind of hit me. So I do get what people love about this book. I did see glimpses of it, but the man in this book was insufferable. I did not like him at all. I found him patronising, I found him very superficial and quite cruel sometimes. I really disliked him, and Laurie, the main girl, just sort of took it. She never stood up for herself. She never seemed to grow a backbone, and she acted as if he was some incredible genius. And I just started getting annoyed at her too. I was just like, come on, forget this man. Not every book has to be strong, independent woman. Women can find a man who makes them a better person or that teaches them something. But in this case, I just found he was just self-congratulatory. He took credit for everything that happened. I was reading about Laurie and I was like, and now I'm trying to have a calm evening and enjoy my book, when all of a sudden this irritating, grating voice comes in, and then he would turn up and I'd be like, oh, I'm sick of hearing from him. I do want to try another Lispector. So it's not the end of my journey with Clarice Lispector, but it was definitely not the book for me. In 13th place, we have Blob, A Love Story by Maggie Sue. Again, I was really excited to read this. The premise of a woman finding a blob and turning it into her perfect boyfriend, that sounds right up my street. And unfortunately, I just really didn't enjoy this. It was really boring. I don't know how that can be boring, but it was. It wasn't even particularly weird. I know that premise sounds weird, but the actual book itself, there just wasn't much of the blob. It was kind of just this really unlikable main character, which again, is not something I dislike necessarily, but there needs to be some sort of something to root for or something to find interesting about a character. She just had this victim mentality for no reason, because everyone around her was really nice to her. She just treats them all terribly for no reason. It just didn't really develop much. It didn't seem particularly interesting, and it didn't really say anything. I thought there would be some sort of commentary about what it means to be human, because we're creating a human from a blob. But there just really wasn't. I just found it really disappointing, and I wanted more of the blob. Next up, in 12th place, we have On a Woman's Madness by Astrid Romer, translated by Lucy Scott. This was my pick for Suriname for my Read the World challenge, and it was longlisted for the International Booker Prize 2025, and I'm reading the whole 2026 longlist as we speak. So I was excited to pick this up because it was kind of related to the sort of things I'm really interested in at the moment. I kind of feel bad putting this in 12th place because I didn't hate it at all. Like, compared to the last two, I actually did quite enjoy reading this, but it was a very difficult read. So this is set in post-colonial Suriname, and we're following a woman in her mid-20s called Noenka, who has been married to this kind of awful man for 9 days and decides she wants a divorce. There was some parts of this that I thought were very beautiful and very philosophical and very thought-provoking. That being said, the writing itself, the way the story is told, is incredibly fragmentary and disjointed. I don't know, I mean, the title references madness, so maybe that is purposeful, but it meant that it's really hard to understand what's going on. Like, each paragraph jumps around in time and setting and perspective, and it just makes it very difficult to follow. So the themes are really interesting. The themes are very thought-provoking, especially as this was originally published in the 80s, I think, in its original form, and it's only recently been translated into English. So it's interesting to see how those same themes of patriarchy and gender roles and sexuality are all sort of still relevant to this day. But in general, I just found it a really difficult book to read. It was definitely the most challenging book I've read so far this year. Although I'm glad I've read it, it definitely won't be one that I revisit or necessarily recommend, without a bit of a caveat that it's not going to be an easy read. So then in 11th place, we have When the Museum is Closed by Emi Yagi. This is a Japanese translation. A beautiful cover. I bought this actually quite a while ago because I've read the author's other book, Diary of a Void, and really enjoyed it. And then I read this in one sitting, and I think maybe weirdly, a lot of it went over my head. I felt like maybe I'm not clever enough to understand this one. So for context, this follows a girl called Rika who has got a new job in a museum where she is speaking Latin to a statue of Venus. To say this is a very short book that I read in one sitting, there's a lot of other stuff going on in here, and I just felt very confused. It's not a very straightforward or clear story. I wanted someone to sit down and explain to me everything at the end. That being said, I had quite a good time reading it. I don't really know what to say about it. Overall, I enjoyed the experience. I just came out of it feeling a bit confused, which is why it's fairly low down on my list. In 10th place, we have The Wax Child by Olga Raven. This is a Denmark translation, and this book was my first book I read from the International Booker longlist this year. Again, had a bit conflicted feelings about this. So this novel is based on a true story of a group of women who are accused of witchcraft in Northern Europe in like the 16th, 17th century. And it is told entirely from the perspective of a wax child, which is this like doll that one of them has made out of beeswax and breathed life into. So this doll is like the one telling the story. And I think, although that is a very unique and interesting premise, I think that was what my problem was with the book, in that because we're one step removed with the narration, I found that I wasn't super emotionally connected to the characters themselves. It was quite an abstract read, and I think just in this case that didn't hit for me. It's incredibly well researched. I did enjoy the writing style. I enjoyed the way the story was told, but it just didn't, like, I felt no emotional connection. But it was just a little too abstract for me, I think. In 9th place, we have Cursed Daughters. I enjoyed this, but it was very much like a okay book, but not something that's going to change my life forever kind of vibe. It was a really interesting story. I liked it was full of very strong female characters that were very morally grey, which is very much my cup of tea. I liked how all the stories interlocked. It's telling the story of a family curse, where all the women are cursed to fall in love with men who don't treat them very well. And there's a lot of talk about like intergenerational trauma, and we follow different timelines of different women through like different generations. There was a few things I didn't like. I found it very slow to begin with and hard to get into. Once I was into it, I like raced through the second half. But I did feel like some of the timelines were a bit confusing and inconsistent. But overall, I did enjoy it. I thought it was a really interesting story, but I just felt it needed a little bit more to make me really love it. We then have in 8th place, Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. This is translated by Sophie Hughes and is an Italian translation. So this follows a young couple who have moved to Berlin, and they very much are in the expat community, so they don't actually speak much German. They don't actually integrate themselves into German life very much. They spend most of their time with a community of expats and they work remotely. And I would say it's less of a story and more of a social commentary on the horrors of modern life. It's about how we get the dopamine we get from social media likes and partying with people who you're not really friends with and wanting this aesthetic home that doesn't look lived in and all those sort of interesting topics. So it's very short, but it does say a lot. Not much of it, I would say, is particularly profound or unique, but it did make me think. I did think it was very thought-provoking, and I think it was very effective. Like, it even kind of feels a bit meta to be reviewing this book. If you are a millennial like me, it's probably definitely worth a read. It did make me sort of analyse myself a little bit. So we are now getting into the top half of the books I read. We have in 7th place, Carrion Crow by Heather Parry. This is the book I got off NetGalley. I can honestly say I have never read anything like this before. I finished it a good almost 3 weeks ago now, and I still kind of feel a bit sick when I think about it. So we follow our main character, Margaret, who has been locked away in the attic by her mother under the guise of preparing her for married life. Like I said, the writing is very intense. It's very visceral. It's hard while reading it not to feel like claustrophobic and nauseated by the sort of things that Margaret is going through. You start to lose, like, time starts to lose all meaning, and we just descend into this like spiral of madness, and there's really no shying away of the really disgusting parts of the experience. Like, the author takes you right there with her. Alongside that, you also get to experience the mother's life. So we have flashbacks to how the mother has got to this point. So there's a lot of commentary on class and colonialism, generational trauma again. And the author does do a great job of creating a character that you, although you despise her for what she's doing to her daughter, you also do pity her, and it's a very complex character, which I did appreciate. The only downside I found in this book was there's a lot of parts that are quite repetitive and slow, because I guess there's only so much that can happen if you're locked in an attic. But overall, I think if you love gothic horror, if you have a very strong stomach, I think you would enjoy this. We then come to number 6, which is the classic I read this month, which is The Master and Margarita. This is a Russian translation. It's one I've had on my TBR for years and years and years, and I just decided one weekend to read it in one sitting. I did do a reading vlog for it, which is on my channel, and I think that was a great way to read it because it really immersed me in the story, and it is such a bizarre story. It's kind of hard to explain what this is even about, but I think reading it in one sitting just meant that I was just like, let's just go with it, let's just roll with it. There's no time to think about what's going on, we're just in it. And I do think that kind of helped me with the experience. I was a bit nervous going in because it is a political satire, and I was a bit worried that all the jokes would go over my head because I just don't know much about Soviet Russia. But I found it really funny. I found it really interesting. It's extremely bizarre and surreal, but also it was much easier to read than I expected. I loved what it said about art and corrupt governments and the themes between good and evil. So yeah, I was really happy with this. I was enjoying analysing it and challenging myself and engaging with it, and I would definitely recommend. We then moved to our top 5. In 5th place, we have Good and Evil and Other Stories by Samantha Schweblin, which is an Argentinian translation. This is a short story collection, and I sort of went into it fairly blind. I knew it was eligible for the Booker Prize, and I saw it on my library app and thought, hello, let's do it. It was one of the best short story collections I've read in a while. I enjoyed almost every story in here. The author is incredibly good at creating like an uncanny an easy, creepy vibe in everyday, mundane situations. And you can't really put your finger on why you're creeped out, but you are. I thought the first 3 stories were good, but I really, really loved the last 3. I thought they were incredible. The last one genuinely freaked me out so much that I was like, I didn't want to read. I wanted to stop reading it. I was like so uncomfortable, which I guess is a good thing because it shows how much she was invoking these feelings in me from what was essentially like 20 pages. Anyway, I just thought it was an amazing collection. I would definitely recommend if you're a short story lover. In 4th place, we have Our Wives Under the Sea. This is one that's been on my radar for so long. Like, I think it was really hyped a good few years ago, and I'm finally gotten around to it. And I'm so glad I did because I really enjoyed it. The story is narrated by both Miri and Leah, who are both wives who have recently been reunited after Leah has returned from a deep sea exploration mission. Leah has returned, but she's definitely been altered by the experience. She's definitely not the same woman that left. And Miri is like struggling to come to terms with the fact that her wife and her marriage seem to have been changed forever because of this. I really loved reading this. I thought, I'm honestly terrified of the ocean. I find it so creepy. So it was a little bit, it hit quite close to home in that the horror and the creepiness and the unease of the book really got me. It's a very slow-paced book. There's long paragraphs. There's a lot of waiting before anything really starts to happen. And it does end with a lot of questions that aren't really answered. So I can imagine that would make it a difficult read for some people if you are more of a plot reader than a character-driven reader, but I really loved it. I thought it was a really good portrayal of like grief and loss. In 3rd place, we have Sky Daddy. I read this right at the start of the month, expecting just a fun, silly, goofy time. And in some ways it was a fun, silly, goofy time, but in many ways, this book was a lot more than that. The premise makes it seem like this book is just kind of weird girl unhinged vibes. It's about a girl that is sexually attracted to planes. That is a large part of the story, but it's just about so much more. I felt like there was so much in this that I wasn't expecting to be there. There are these funny antics. There is this like dark, mildly disturbing layer underneath. I really loved her. I really rooted for her. She felt so believable, and there was many relatable aspects of her personality that made me want to really, I would have totally been friends with her by the end of the book. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. If you're interested in it, I would definitely pick it up. So we're down to our top 2. In 2nd place, I have Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. So I attend a local village book club, like an in-person one. And this was chosen as the book club pick for February. And it is not the sort of thing I would normally pick up, but I'm really glad it was picked because I ended up loving it. I'd managed to avoid knowing much about it before starting it. So I went in relatively blind and I was genuinely quite blown away. It is a very long book, but it means that you have so much time to truly and deeply know the protagonist, who is a young boy who is growing up in southern Appalachia in a very sort of poverty-stricken area. If you like a book where you are with one character for an extremely long time, then I would definitely look into this. It reminded me a little bit of The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which is one of my favourite books, which again, you're following one character throughout almost a lifetime. But yeah, so the narrative voice in this was just incredible. It's probably one of the best and most memorable I've ever read. I genuinely kept forgetting he wasn't a real person. I rooted for him so deeply. I cared for him so deeply that I got physically angry and upset at certain parts of the book. I really cared for this character. It's a very complex, it's a very frustrating, it's a very heartbreaking story. It's not a lighthearted read at all. There's a lot of very dark topics. It's examining the opioid crisis in America, and it has themes of poverty, addiction, foster care, systematic institutional failure. But there is also a lot of love and hope and resilience there. I did read a lot of reviews of this book. I've read a lot of analysis about this book, and I can understand a lot of the criticism. I didn't love the ending. I found the second half a lot weaker than the first half. But the experience of reading the book just sort of overshadowed all that. I just can't see myself forgetting this book anytime soon. I really felt like I don't think I'll ever forget Demon as a character. So now we finally come to my favourite book of the month. If you've got this far, I hope you're excited by the book I'm about to show you, because this was not what I was expecting to be my favourite book of the month. I can promise you that. This was Shark Heart by Emily Harbeck. If you have got this far, put a shark emoji in the comments, because this was, I don't even know where to start. This broke me. I picked this up because the premise was interesting to me. We are following a husband and wife where the husband has found out very early on in their marriage that he has a genetic mutation, which means he will turn into a great white shark. Although that sounds very interesting, that this book would make you cry, but it made me cry. I found this so heartbreaking and so emotional and so powerful. And that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting a fun weird girl book, a bit like I said about Shark Daddy. Shark Daddy. Sky Daddy. I didn't read 2 shark books this month. I was expecting it to be a fun, silly, goofy, weird girl book. And there was a lot of weirdness in this. It is a really, really weird book, but it totally captivated me. I thought the writing was incredible. It was so witty. It was very funny in places. It's such a unique way to explore what it means to be human. The only criticism I had was I kind of wish we'd gone a bit deeper into like the societal discussions about this society where people have genetic mutations that turn them into various animals. I would 100% recommend this. I loved it. So there we are. That is everything I read this month. So I'm really loving this reading mood I'm in. Like, I cannot be stopped. I've already read 2 books in March and it's the 3rd. I'm a bit feral at the moment, but that is a good thing. So if you've got this far, thank you for watching. Let me know what your favourite book of the month was, and I will see you next time. Bye.